Hey y'all boys, what's good? It's your boy Mar back another video on y'all boys today. I know you see a title, man. Today we're reviewing Daredevil season 1. Marvel Studios finally officially made all the Netflix shows canon and added them to the official timeline, so I decided to review them along with the other MCU titles instead of doing it after. But before we get started, if you guys are interested in watching me react to movies like Batman Begins, which is already up on the reaction channel, or reacting with my friends sometimes to shows like Loki and Invincible, the link will be in the description down below. And all I ask for you guys to do is to hit that like button, comment which season of Daredevil is your favorite, and a sub to the channel. But let's start talking about things that's actually in this show. They already started this show in such a depressing way. They let us know how much darker this show is from the beginning. Even our first fight scene is pretty brutal and not the normal superhero fight scene that you expect. The way we get introduced to Karen is so interesting considering where we end up with her later down the line. The relationship building and chemistry between Matt and Foggy throughout the whole season and series is just perfect.
But if there's a stunning woman with questionable character in the room, Matt Murdock's gonna find her and Foggy Nelson is gonna suffer. All right. I don't disagree with anything you're saying.
I love how we talk about Kingpin before we actually know who he is. Like, they literally don't even say his name, which I personally love a lot, because they also do the exact same thing with Matt, because he's called the Man in Black or Man in a Black Mask until literally the last episode of this season. I said this in my Batman Begins reactions, which if y'all haven't seen it, you should go watch it. But some people don't like the storytelling of jumping from past to present, but I personally don't mind it as long as it's written well, because they do it a lot in this series, especially the first season. I haven't read the comics, but I heard people complain about how Daredevil was more of a boxer type than a ninja, but I really feel like they made it work in this series because of everything they do with his dad. Can we just speak on how much of a W Claire is for seeing a random guy beat to death in a dumpster and decided to save his life? I really do like how comforting Foggy was to Karen in the beginning of the series, because there was so much that she was going through, which sets up so much for her character later on. It's crazy how Matt's dad literally died just so he could have his son hear their name be chanted. We all know what happens in this fight scene. A really funny and crazy thing about it also is that Matt is nowhere near 100% in this scene and he still took all of them out. But this fight scene is honestly just perfect and it's properly praised for what it is. I also love this little detail where he shows the kid his face so he is less scared than he would have been if he saw a man in a mask. It's crazy how much this fight scene alone has done for comic book fight scenes. Like, there's literally videos just on this scene. Even the court scenes in this show are just done so well. Like, it really is a lore slash superhero show. I mentioned earlier how I love what they were doing with Kingpin before I even see him or hear his name, but it seems like this that show specifically what I mean.
He'll find me, make an example, and then he'll find everyone I've ever cared about and do the same to them.
Like, do you guys see how scared he was just because he said his name? Then he bowed himself because of it. Now that's how you write a terrifying villain. I love the scene where Daredevil has to save Claire, because as much as he acts like a boxer in this show, he still very much has ninja tendencies, which is why I sometimes don't understand the complaint. With the way they were building up Matt and Claire's relationship, a part of me wanted more of it, to be honest, but I understand why they went a different way. Oh yeah, also don't embarrass Kingpin in front of Vanessa. Well, unless you want your head taken off by a car door. Yeah, this was something I never thought I'd see. I'm so glad that Matt is good with women, because it really adds that little spice to the story, if you get what I'm saying. They do a great job of emphasizing how terrifying Kingpin is, because the first time we see Matt at the police station, he literally witnesses a man getting killed by cops just because they said his name. It really shows the amount of power that he has. I honestly forgot that this man just blows up like half the city towards the middle of the season. I feel like episode 6 was really the turning point. Like, it was great before, but everything just started going to shit from here. Also, I feel like they do a good job of showing how cool and the range of Daredevil here, because he has to save a man that's basically already dead in an abandoned warehouse while fighting and dealing with a good cop. I don't know about y'all, but it was hilarious to me how Matt just wouldn't let Vladimir die. I love the first conversation that Matt and Fisk have, because you can just tell that this rivalry was going to last for a long time and they really just don't like each other at all. Vladimir is a real one for coming to his senses finally and sacrificing himself for Matt to get out. I mentioned earlier how the show jumps from past to present, and they do it again when Six comes into the mix. It helps the story because we obviously know that Matt is blind and that enhanced all his other senses, but we didn't know how he was able to do all of this, and still getting involved just showed us how. One thing I meant to talk about earlier was how well they handled the side characters. Everything that they were doing with Karen and Ben, doing all the digging of the little things Fisk and his people were doing, and Karen and Foggy with the whole Miss Cardenas situation. Like, most of these shows have the problem where if the protagonist and in some cases the antagonists aren't present in the story, it just automatically gets worse. And although I of course care more about what's going on with Daredevil and Kingpin, but the writing for Karen, Foggy, Wesley, Ben, and Stick is just great and should be acknowledged. I love when Stick comes around. It really enhances more of Matt's morality side. Like, he was gonna risk himself dying to save that kid that Stick was trying to kill. It's ironic how Stick was trying to tell Matt he couldn't feel anything for anyone, but kept the wrapper that Matt gave him when he was a kid. It's wild how complex they make Kingpin. Like, in the beginning, he's really just a villain. He's just a terrible guy, when he of course still is, but you understand him way more when we get to episode 8 of the season and actually see how he ended up like this. I love the shift at the end of episode 8 where it really seems like Daredevil was gonna finally start winning this war he's been having with Fisk. But as soon as he tells Ben what's going on to get Wilson out in the public, Kingpin is just a step ahead of them and goes public while saying verbatim the same exact things Ben was writing about. Like, this is just honestly beautiful writing. When Vanessa says,
"You could always ask him yourself."
the amount of chills this show makes go down your spine is crazy. Miss Cardenas getting murdered was generally something that was just very unexpected, at least for me, and just shows how cruel and what lengths Fisk would go to just to have what he wants. They kept showing parts of this fight with Noble throughout the episode, but actually seeing it in full, it's such a great fight and interesting to see Matt really struggle. Like, it took bro to be on fire to stop him, and even that barely did it. Matt has so much heart, man, because surviving Kingpin while being that injured and then somehow having the willpower to get out of there is insane. I love everything about the way Foggy finally found out, because in my opinion, it just makes perfect sense. Madame Gao really explained it to Fisk perfectly. He's trying to play both sides of the coin, but that's just not how it works. He really is struggling with trying to be the good guy and the villain, which is what makes him so complex, but we ultimately know what he ends up choosing. I really do appreciate the writers giving us a dive into Ben's life to see what's going on outside of everything we had already seen, because it just makes the audience feel for him even more. It was very fun and interesting to see how Matt and Foggy came to be friends and to just see how they were before we met them. The Nelson vs. Murdoch episode was just perfect. It was very interesting to see how Fisk acts when he's vulnerable and stressed out because everything that happened with Vanessa. Karen killing Wesley is probably one of the most shocking and craziest moments of the series. But Wesley was such a good character. Like, he played the right hand man to Fisk so well. I love the way they were handling how Foggy was dealing with finding out what Matt had been doing, because it just honestly feels like a way more realistic approach. How the season was going, it had to be either Karen or Ben, and they had to choose Ben, which I think was the right decision. But man, Fisk really is relentless and so emotional with his actions. I don't know why Leland ever thought he would have anything on Kingpin to come at him like that, because there's no way he thought he wouldn't just kill him. The Samaritan speech from Fisk is one of the best monologues we've ever heard from a villain. I don't care what anybody tells me. 4-letter word right here: aura. I really love this fight scene between Daredevil and Kingpin. They were finally able to actually fight each other, and it was great. They got him in jail without having to kill him, and I'm glad he comes back around. Of course, not for Matt's sake, but as a viewer, because Vincent D'Onofrio is just incredible. Now, this is how you end a season. Daredevil season 1 is literal perfection. I honestly have no complaints about what happens, how it happens. Like, the writing is just beautiful on all cylinders. The action is just fantastic and arguably some of, if not the best we have in all comic book media, and it's brutal. Like, the tone is so dark, but it feels so right for this series, and I feel like all the characters get their justice and due for all this. Of course, RP Miss Cardenas and Ben, but I feel like they weren't killed unnecessarily. Like, they had reasons to go that I believe make total sense to the story, and it just shows how evil our antagonist Kingpin really is. I love this character arc and journey Matt has to go throughout the season. He questions everything, his faith, his morality, everything, just because of how much power Fisk had, and it felt like it was impossible to defeat him, but he had the willpower to do it. One thing that just stands out so much from these Netflix shows compared to the Disney Plus ones is how much more freedom it feels like we have. Like, we can actually take a dive into these characters' lives where some of the side characters can literally be main characters. Everything to do with Karen, Foggy, father, which I forgot to mention how important he is in this season, and story for Matt in general. He was really like Matt's moral compass and someone he looked to for guidance. Even Ben and Wesley, like, they were really integral parts to the story and really helped flesh out our main characters in Daredevil and Kingpin. And that's something that the Disney Plus shows have a problem doing because of how short those shows are, and I hope for Daredevil Born Again, Marvel remembers why they formatted the Netflix shows the way that they did and realized that this is what works and what they should aim for. But with all that being said, I'm going to give Daredevil season 1 a perfect and first ever on the channel 10 out of 10. I love the show so much. It's one of my favorite shows ever, and season 1 is great on all cylinders. But y'all let me know what y'all thought about this video, and let me know how you feel about Daredevil season 1. And if you haven't already, make sure to go sub to my reaction channel where I'm currently watching the Nolan Batman trilogy. If you're interested to go see me and some of my boys react to those shows and movies, make sure to drop the suggestions in the comments down below. But y'all boys, make sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, and make sure to always Trust the process.
But if there's a stunning woman with questionable character in the room, Matt Murdock's gonna find her, and Foggy Nelson is gonna suffer. All right, I don't disagree with anything you're saying.